Good morning. Good morning. Live office hours. That's right. Sorry. I need to start a thing here. Ah, I can't see. It's so annoying. There we go. There we go. Okay. I think I got some stuff. I think I'm doing it now. Here we are. Live office hours. Oh, that was a little weird thing there. Not sure what was happening there. So, hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Let me see if I can move. Nope. All right. Try to split the difference so that my eyes aren't like. They always are, but hey, what can you say? What can you do? What can you do? It is morning. It is Monday morning. Today is the 4th of October here in Canada land. I'm pretty sure it's that way everywhere else. Oh, thank you. You are welcome. You are welcome. And my name is Dr. Shannon Coates, and these are some live office hours today. I am I'm coming to you live from Toronto, north of Toronto, which the area that I'm in are the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and oh, that's Toronto. Okay, let's talk about Toronto. I'm a little north of Toronto, but let's talk about Toronto. Toronto, for thousands of years, has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River. And as we say as well, today this meeting place is still the home. Toronto, I think, means meeting place, actually, is still the home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and grateful to have the space to be able to live and work here in Toronto, and of course where I am, which is a little north of Toronto, quite a bit north, actually. Well, depends. All depends. What you consider north of Toronto. If you're in Toronto, I'm like really far north. But those of us who are within commuting distance of Toronto don't feel like we're that far north. Torontonians are like, ooh, so far north. Anywho, today I wanted to talk a little bit about something that someone asked about recently, and something that I think has come up a few times, and especially, as I'm talking, sometimes people say, oh wait, what about blah blah blah, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should talk about that sometime. And then there we go. Oh, hi Kylie, watching from Sydney, Australia. So yes, oh no, it's what, like 7 p.m. there, or no, 11, I don't know, it depends. I can't remember what Sydney's time is. Anyway, so it's not tomorrow yet there. Does that make sense? Anywho, so yes, we're talking about warm-ups today. And this is something Chris Johnson recently, let's say in the last 3 months, let's go with 3 months. Oh, it's midnight there. Oh, okay. There you go. Midnight there. So in fact, it is the 5th there. So Chris Johnson posted both on Facebook. I saw it both on Facebook and on Instagram. So I posted that, and he may also have a mailing list. So I'm not sure about that, but where he talked a little bit about why he doesn't do warm-ups, and and I've also had this kind of when I've worked with Heidi Moss, she talks about warm-ups and how she doesn't really do warm-ups, and she has all of the sort of brain reasons behind, and other reasons. And when I first heard that from Heidi, I certainly felt like very vindicated, because I felt like, oh, okay, that's amazing, because I haven't done, I sometimes call them warm-ups, which we'll get to in a minute, but I haven't done warm-ups in lessons in a very long time. And not even with little ones, and we'll talk about why in a minute. But and so, often back when I did this, I don't do this right now, but back in the day, folks would observe me teaching, and then we would have, they'd come into my studio, and I have sort of like an open studio mentoring session, and then we would have a discussion about that afterwards. And invariably, one of the first questions, or at least at some point, one of the important questions that came through was, you didn't seem to do a warm up with any of the singers you worked with. Like they would come and observe for maybe 2 or 3 lessons, or observe from, the last half of one lesson into the next half of another lesson, or etc. And so invariably, that is my cat. I know that sounds horrible. Sounds like he's dying, but he's just a crazy cat who just is like, where did everybody go? Petey! I unplugged my phone so I wouldn't be interrupted, and yet here I am with the cat. Anyway, maybe you can't hear him. Maybe you can't hear him. Let's dare to dream, shall we? So invariably the question comes through. So I noticed you didn't do a warm-up with the students you were working with, and I was like, yes, it's true. I did not do a warm-up. So that's often the question. So I have been not doing warm-ups for quite a while. Warm-ups in the sort of strict sense. So let's talk a little bit. I made some notes here. Try to stay on track. So let's talk a little bit about what we mean by warm-ups, what the purpose might be, and how we might think about reframing what we mean by warm-ups, and or how we're doing warm-ups if we continue to do them. Let's talk a little bit about that. And I want to just say that the whole why I don't do warm-ups in the voice studio, that of course is just like a thing to draw you in. And it's not that, because again, we're going to just kind of reframe it, and then you're going to see that, well, I probably do warm-ups. It's just not the way we think about it. So where did this idea of doing a warm-up in the voice studio come from? And I'm not sure in terms of historically. I don't know that information, and I didn't do the research to figure it out. I do know that there's lots of sort of, or at least where Heidi Moss talks about this coming from, is coming from sort of sports psychology and sports, weight training from our sort of athletic, the way that we train for athletics and sport. And so there's lots of crossover, right, between what we're doing in athletics and sport and what and starting to apply things into voice. And there's kind of this crossover. And some applications, and part of this is because, sport and what we do in sport it's highly researched. And so there's, and what we do in sort of singing voice isn't necessarily researched to that same level. So it makes sense to kind of take some of that research and apply it over into the voice, and to have, to see what parallels we can draw. But the thing about sport and warming up in sport, or warming up to say run, or warming up to play a game, or anything along those lines, is that what we're doing in sport is we're not only are we trying to coordinate for a general outcome, not only are we trying to increase coordination, we're also generally trying to increase weight bearing, right? So we're trying to increase muscular tissue. We're actually trying to increase weight bearing in the muscles. And so, warming up in the sense of I need to stretch, and I don't even really know, so maybe you'll walk for a little bit before you run, or maybe you'll do, I don't really know, I'm not really a sports person, so maybe you'll do a little stretching, I don't know, what are you going to do before you run, right? Or before you play a sport or something along those lines. So, and we do those because we don't want to get injured, right? So we don't want to have injury, and it's sort of been researched that if we do a warm-up before we engage in heavy physical activity, then like lifting weights, for example, then we're going to reduce injury, or reduce the incidence of injury. And there is some research to suggest that is the same in singing, that that if we warm up, then we will have reduced potential for injury in singing. But the way we talk about warming up and the way we understand warming up is different in singing than it is in sports. And part of the reason for that is that when we are singing, we're not weight bearing. So the muscles that we're working on in singing, the muscles that we use in singing, we're not trying to get them stronger. We're not trying to get, not necessarily, I mean, possibly to a certain extent, in some cases, there may be some exceptions. But in general, overall, the vast majority of what we're doing in singing lessons is we're not trying to get muscles stronger. We're not trying to get the diaphragm stronger. We're not trying to get the thyroarytenoid stronger. We're not trying to get the cricothyroid muscles stronger. Like all of the muscles that are involved in singing, we're not trying to get them stronger in terms, especially in the way that we think about for sport. So in sport, we're trying to get those muscles to like, I don't know what we're doing. I'm trying to get them in addition to finding better coordination to, have that physical activity. We're also trying to, strengthen muscles. So in our voice lessons then, and when we're training for singing, some of that idea of like I need to get stronger muscles, some of that has kind of filtered into voice training. And so that partially then has affected or has influenced how we think about warming up, because we think, okay, I need to warm up in order to strengthen muscles. And that isn't really what we're doing in singing. So in singing, what we're doing, and also the muscles that we're using for singing, we use all day long, right? So diaphragm is moving, hopefully, it is moving, may not be as David Wilson over David Wilson Method so rightly commented on a post of mine on Instagram the other day, that often the diaphragm isn't functioning as well as we would like it to, and often there can be things stuck and not functioning as well as we would like it to, and the movement isn't there at the level that we would like it to. That is certainly true. But we are still using the diaphragm every single time we breathe, every single time you inhale, right? It's moving. So that is not necessarily a muscle that we need to it's not like we need to warm that up. Same with singing, or same with the muscles in the larynx that we use for phonating, right? If I'm speaking all day, I don't really need to warm those muscles up. They're already functioning. Now, what I may need to do is I may need to get my head voice connected or moving. That could be part of a warm-up for sure. But let's talk a little bit, because speech is in chest voice, right? So speech is in the lower register. We use the thick folds. We use a slightly different pressurization, all that stuff for the lower part of the voice in speech. So when I come into a lesson, especially if I'm going to be singing a lot in head voice, I might need to do or want to do a little bit of movement up through the head voice. But is that a warm-up for, that's a warm-up for a specific thing, right? So let's talk about that in a minute. So what we want to kind of consider when we're thinking, okay, what are we doing at the beginning of this lesson? Are we warming up? And if you've got a 12-year-old or a 7-year-old or a 15-year-old or an adult who's coming to a lesson at the end of their work day, for example, or who's coming to a lesson at the end of their school day, they've already talked. I mean, if you're teaching at 7 a.m. before anybody wakes up, then yeah, you might want to do a little vocalization, and you might want to just wake up the muscles a little bit, but it's not a warm up in the sense of I need to get I need to get prepped because I'm going to do weight bearing, right? It's not that kind of warm up. It's more of a just wake the muscles up, and that's more of but if you're working with someone who has been at work all day or who has been, at school all day already, they don't need to warm up the muscles to create phonation. They've already done it all day long, and they've been breathing all day. Those muscles are ready. They're fine. So we might want to do some other things, certainly, but it's not a warm-up in the sense of I haven't used these muscles. Sure is different as the warm-up for singers than the physiological warm-up. Yes. So there's yes, exactly. What I'm trying to get at here, exactly, Diana, what I'm trying to get at here is that the idea of a warm-up has really infiltrated, this idea of the way that we warm up for sport has really infiltrated singing, and it's kind of giving us an idea around how a warm-up should be that isn't necessarily true for what we're doing in the singing voice. So Um, what I'm hoping that we might start to do is to consider, rather than I'm getting these muscles ready to complete a task or a heavy task, rather than I'm, in at the beginning of a lesson, what I'm doing is I'm working toward more coordination, right? I'm working toward a deeper coordination, or working toward having specific coordinations occur. I'm not working towards stronger muscles, right? That's not what we're working toward. We're working toward a deeper coordination, and a more efficient coordination in the singing voice. So that changes then what we think of as a warm up. And in lots of cases, when I talk to teachers about this, and singers as well, that changes the perspective. And I start to not then think of these as warm ups in that like physiological sport sense. And I start to think of them as technical exercises. So I start to think of technique, right? I start to think of this coordinating, what I'm doing right now is more for coordination, for long-term coordination. It's not about like, and the coordination is that long-term coordination is the thing that is going to give me less injury, less potential for injury later on. It's not the like strengthening of the muscle that is going to give me the potential for less injury later on. So it's a little bit of a change in the mindset around how we think about the warm-up. And some folks, might just say, okay, Shannon, that's all just like semantics. However, and in a sense it is. However, what we believe about why we're doing the thing really affects the efficiency and the efficacy of what we do, right? So if we believe that I'm warming up so that I can strengthen the muscles, that's a different thing that I'm going to try to accomplish than if I am warming up so that I can create a better, a more efficient coordination. Those are two different things. And creating a more efficient coordination allows me to be in a different kind of mindset around how what I do in that warm up and how I create that, what technical exercises I might do and what my outcome is, what my goal is. It gives me a different outcome and goal. So that changes our thoughts, right? So muscles getting ready to do something versus muscles getting ready to have a better coordination, because those muscles, for the most part, are already doing something. So I want to also just kind of take something I was talking about earlier in terms of head voice and chest voice. I think it's because we believe we need to do some training to go through a long day and avoid vocal fatigue. Yes. So as voice teachers, certainly, we want to... Yes, as voice teachers and as singers, we're working we're using our voices a lot, right, as voice teachers, and we want to have this very specific coordination that allows for the lowest level of vocal fatigue possible, right? We want to create, but that's not about strengthening muscles, right? That's about efficiency. That's about coordination and efficiency, and also knowing what your body needs and all that stuff. But that's about like how efficient and coordinated is the creation of my phonation, and how I'm demonstrating and all that stuff. Like how efficient and coordinated is that versus how strong are my muscles. My diaphragm's going to keep moving. My diaphragm's going to keep engaging no matter what. Right? It's going to go for if it doesn't move, I'm in trouble, right? So like it's going to keep going. It's going to keep engaging. I'm not working toward longevity in my diaphragm, right? I'm working toward coordination so that when I'm breathing and when I'm creating sounds, I'm doing it in the most efficient way possible so that I am then lowering my chance of vocal fatigue, certainly, and injury. Especially in the voice lessons. So, and especially with the amount of voice use that teachers have, voice teachers and teachers of all sorts, all of us talkers have, politicians and everybody who uses their voice for a living. So I wanted to say a little bit about, along with thinking about technical skills and creating greater technical efficiency and motor coordination and efficiency as being the basis of a warm-up, I also wanted to just draw our attention to the kind of singing that we're going to be doing in our lesson, for example, or in a performance, and then where that singing kind of sits in terms of where it is in tessitura, what kind of singing it is. If I'm a rock singer versus a pop singer, for example, if I'm singing a super belty role in a music theater versus a super lyric based, what's it called, head voicey, golden age kind of role, right? A legit role, if you want. I don't love legit, but what kind of singing I'm going to be doing. If I'm doing a 3-hour set of jazz versus a 3-hour set of rock. If I'm doing Aida versus Mozart, right? What kind of singing, what's the output, what's the kind of singing, the requirements for that singing. If I'm in a lesson and coming back to the 12-year-old who doesn't really need a warm up in the chest voice and the breathing kind of thing, but they probably need to exercise that head voice or the upper part of the voice a little bit because they've been speaking all day, so they haven't been speaking like this all day, likely not. So they likely need a little bit of movement up into their head voice. So taking that into consideration, that is, for me, that is if we do employ a warm-up, or if we're working with singers, especially professional singers, to to create a warm-up for themselves and warm up, I'm putting that in big quotes again, but to create a warm-up for themselves before they go on stage, what we're looking for then is what is the quality, what am I going to be doing the most in this set, or in this lesson, or in this, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'm going to do the opposite, right? So I'm going to do the other thing in my warm-up, in my prep, in my lesson, at the beginning of the lesson. I'm going to do the opposite thing. So if you know that you've got a singer coming in who you're going to be working on, can't think of any. These are a few of my favorite things. You're going to be working on my favorite things in the lesson, and you know that they're like a super exuberant, talky person, and they were likely talking a lot. You might want to do some warming up. That includes moving up through the top of the range and back down again, so that they start to just kind of get comfy with that top of the range. If you've worked with someone in a lesson, the entire lesson, and you've done a big belter song the entire time, then you may want to do some head voice warm down work. And this is the kind of training that's sort of like, I consider this a part of cross training. I mean, normally when we think about cross training, we think about cross training as like stylistically cross training, but this is something that I consider cross training as well. If we're working all agility all the time in a lesson, then we might want to have some sustained singing at the end of the lesson. So working a little bit of opposites, but again, that isn't really about warming up. It's more about finding different kinds of efficiencies, right? So again, this is a little bit more about semantics, I know. And there's it's about how we define the term warm up as well. But so if we are working on, I'll throw these into the comments as well. But if we are working on some fundamentals in the lesson, because I want to give you something practical today, something to consider is taking a look at Titze's 5, and he does call them warm-ups. But they're not warm-ups in the sense of, and I just realized that I forgot to pull them up here. Let me just pull them up. 5 seconds. Vocal warm-ups, there they are. So he does call them warm-ups, and lots of folks will say, if you don't warm up, you're gonna like you're running the risk of injury. And again, it's not really about, it's just not that we're not talking about like strength training in the warm-up, right? We're not working toward like strength training here. We're working toward coordination. So Titze's favorite vocal warm-ups are really all about, he's got 5 of them, excuse me, and these are all about fundamental coordinations They're all about like working with fundamental coordinations. How do we figure out these very specific kinds of different kinds of coordinations? So one of the things that he has there, again, I'll link this, but one of them is lip trill, tongue trill, humming, phonation into narrow tubes. So in other words, SOVT exercises. So that starts to, that gets you that coordinates breath with phonation. It helps to find efficiency in the vocal folds, efficiency in phonation. It helps to balance the laryngeal suspensatory muscles. Yes, I said that correctly. Helps to have balance in terms of what's happening in the vocal tract, and gives you this sort of resting position. It helps to lower your phonation threshold pressure. So it gives you there's lots of great things about SOVT, but that is all about teaching coordination, right? Giving your body a different and more efficient way to coordinate. One of the things that he has on there is a 2-octave pitch glide on E or Oo. And this is what I was talking about earlier about, moving all the way through the range. So we give all of those muscles just the chance to like stretch it out and engage. We get the muscles that are, more engaged when we're lower in the range, a little chance to disengage a little bit. And then when the muscles that are high in the range, and it also coordinates breath because we have to have different flows as we're moving through the range, and it coordinates our vocal tract shaping because we have to change vocal tract shaping as we move through the range. So it's got all of those different kinds of transitions happening there, and it moves you through registration as well. So there are a bunch of those. He has a messa di voce exercise on there, and he has staccato with arpeggios. So staccato helps you to give, like, really, really helps you to coordinate onset, right? And onset is all about, breath and vocal folds and vocal tract shaping, plus prephonatory visualization, or whatever that's called. I can't remember what it's called now, but it's like that you imagining the note in your head before you sing it, which helps you to have greater accuracy, etc. So like it's a beautiful staccato. It's a beautiful coordination exercise. And trains muscles, etc. He also talks about why, the benefits of these. So messa di voce, forward tongue roll and extension, getting these, creating allowing both articulatory and resonance structures to kind of learn how to function separately from each other. Separately isn't entirely accurate, but to not be completely connected to each other in terms of, like, I need my tongue in this position to make this vowel, but I also need it in this position to create this tonal outcome. So how do I find the difference between those two? Where do I find that balance? So we have the, like, that push and pull between articulation and resonance in the articulators. And the structures of the vocal tract. Anyway, so lots of good, those that he has, like I said, he has 5 exercises on there. I will link it in the comments here. And sorry, Instagram, I'm not sure what I'll do for you, but you can come on over to Facebook and take a look. So if you are looking for ways to have some specific fundamental coordinations, to work on these fundamental coordinations, that is one way, or a place to start, is with Titze's 5 exercises. But see, I call them exercises, not vocal warm-ups. So again, I'm not saying don't do warm-ups, of course. I'm saying really be cognizant of why it seems to be important to do the warm-up, and what the outcome of the warm-up, what your hoped for objective is, like what your objective of the warm-up is, and then whether or not, and just kind of being cognizant of whether or not that singer actually does need a warm-up in the sort of traditional sense, or whether what we actually need is to do a little bit of coordination, right? So we're basing what we do at the beginning of the lesson in what we would traditionally call the warm-up space, or the warm-up time, basing that on what the demands are going to be in the lesson, or what they're going to be long-term. And working toward that, rather than just like a general, like, okay, we breathe and then we, then we do this, and then we stretch and we breathe and we do this. That's fine. if you are working with someone who is a rock star and they are continually moving forward in their body, this is me playing guitar, they're continually moving forward in their body with their shoulder up here, their warm up or their initial like part of the lesson probably needs to be this, right? Something that is opposite to what they're going to continually do in their lesson or whatever their body is going to do in performance. So considering what the actual demands are for that singer, and then working that way. So hopefully that has been useful to you. I do have, you know, when I'm working with undergraduate voice teachers or beginning voice teachers, I do talk quite a bit actually about creating exercises and understanding exercises with pedagogical intent and understanding and how to build exercises and all that kind of thing. And you know, and that'll be part of the Voice Ped Undegree as well. That'll be a unit in the Voice Ped Undegree. But the whole understanding, again, I just want to make sure that we're really clear that we haven't taken on this kind of like, the reason I'm warming up is so that I don't injure myself because I'm going to try to build muscle, right? I'm going to try to get stronger. That's not what we're doing. We're getting more coordinated. So keep that in mind, and hopefully that's useful for you in your work this week. Have a great week, friends. I will talk to you later. Boop. And